We're about to start an important panel in this Capital Markets Congress, and we're going to have the integration of the impact investment as an innovative model. And Professor Alex Nichols is our honorary speaker.
Appointed at the University of Oxford. He is also a tutorial fellow and member of the governing body at Harris Manchester College, University of Oxford. And in 2004, he was the founder of the School Center for Social Entrepreneurship, for which he helped raise the core funding. And he will talk about the landscape of impact investing. Professor Nichols, stage is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. And thank you to everybody who's organized the conference and for inviting me to be here. So I've been working on this subject for about 15 years now and have seen very substantial changes over this period where really we've seen the emergence of a substantive new market for capital allocated for impact that's increasingly become known as impact investing. So I'm just going to share a couple of things with you. Firstly is the landscape of this space in terms of market size and estimated returns. And secondly, some of the innovations that range of capital can allow us to achieve in terms of impact outcomes. So here is a spectrum of impact finance. Some of you may have seen many different versions of this, which have been around for over a decade. Different organizations have put this together. Now, really, the key point to take away from this is the huge variety of available capital for impact that really moves from, on the left-hand side, what you might call impact-only capital, which would be grants from the government or from philanthropists, which, as you'll see, in terms of estimated returns, is effectively minus 100%. In other words, you do not expect your capital back because they're grants by definition. And then on the far right-hand side, the other extreme, you have what's called ESG, or environmental, social, and governance finance, which is a very substantial market now. It's about 30% of all assets under management, or around about $38 trillion US. Now, that's a very different kind of capital. It's typically invested by asset managers in a negative screened way. In other words, they'll look at a portfolio or a fund or a set of investments, and they'll remove from them stocks or investments which are either considered to be inappropriate for the investor profile, which would be potentially tobacco or arms or other things like that, or which are just seen as highly risky over time. So those might be high intensity carbon organizations, petrochemical organizations whose long-term value, given the nature of the climate crisis, may be much lower than expected currently, and they would be removed from a portfolio because of the risk profile of those stocks. So that's those are the two extremes. So one is essentially a set of investments which look for a market rate return, but screen out the, as it were, dangerous or risky stocks. And at the other extreme on the left-hand side, we have grant money, which is looking for no return at all, but high impact. And then in between the two, you've got a range of other sorts of capital. So you can see the returns move from minus 100% to minus 2% to a market rate, 6 to 20%, 3%, 28%, and so on. You can see as we go across the top, different kinds of returns. All of this stuff is evidenced by a whole variety of sources, I should say. In other words, there is no consolidated data set for these kind of performance figures. I had to go into many reports and create them myself, which is why they're estimated, because there's no Bloomberg, there's no real detail about these investments. You have to put together bits and pieces of information from all over the place. So that's really why they're in the form of a range of returns. But then if we go across the bottom line, we'll see we've spoken about grants. Now, program-related investments are foundation or philanthropic investments, which are made typically out of their grant portfolio, which in the United States, for example, is 5% of all their assets, but with the expectation that they will either have only a small impairment on their capital or sometimes even a market rate return. So they're impact aligned investments, which have the flexibility to be, say, minus 2.5%. So if you invest $100, you'd get something like 97.5% back, which you could recycle, or sometimes they're put into market rate impact stocks. Then we have two categories of impact investment, which are, according to the Global Impact Investing Network survey of their members, could be categorized into impact first or finance first. So impact first, as you can see, again, similar to PRI, can often take a haircut, if you will, on their returns. So the data that the GIN survey puts out suggests that could be minus 6%, but they also have upside as well. But it's the fact that they have the opportunity to, as it were, lose money that they're called impact first. So the prime issue is creating impact. And then the second category is also focused on impact companies and investments, but with a much more of a market rate focus. And those two categories together constitute what the GIN suggests is the impact investing market, as it were, a narrow market. Then we have mission-related investing. So MRIs are typically foundation endowment assets. So that would be in the United States, 95% of all their assets, so minus the 5% of grants, which are invested for a market rate return, because that investment provides the annual capital to give away in the grant making 5%. So that's there. Development finance is people like CDC and IFC, Asian Development Bank, where this is money put typically into developing economies and around issues like health and welfare. And according to the IFC, this is around 742 billion US. Then we have green and social bonds, a very quick growth area at the moment, which just return bond returns of 0 to 2%, let's say, but are really on the right hand of this spectrum, one of the fastest growing sectors. So these are typically debt products going into climate related issues or welfare related issues, and a number of these are sovereign wealth fund debt offerings. So, for example, China is the biggest issuer of social bonds in the world at the moment. So that's a range of capital. So it's impact only, impact first, finance first. The returns there are kind of estimates. And the other thing, but I mean, they're approximately right. And the other thing you'll note is the market size, so the amount of assets under management in each of these sectors. And I think what you'll notice is the biggest categories, as I've mentioned, are on the right-hand side, basically mainstream assets which are being screened, but also the mission-related section of this, which is 1.5 trillion, again, a rough approximation. That's foundation endowment capital across the world. And what's interesting is how little of that actually is invested for impact. So although MRIs exist there, they really are often simply going into market rate companies. I mean, I think the number one stock there is probably Apple or Google. So these are not obviously impactful stocks. So what we've got here then is a very rich range of capital, much richer and more varied than you would get in mainstream markets, where you wouldn't have the opportunity to allocate capital knowing in advance you will lose some of it, for example, or you'll take a sub-market risk-adjusted rate return. So this gives us a huge range of capital. And so the second thing I just want to say is how we can use that. So the way this is used, and this is again unique to impact investing, is in what's called blended finance. So Convergence is a global network platform for impact investors who want to work with others. So governments, philanthropists, some market rate corporations who want to find a space where they can create blended deals. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, blended finance is the use of catalytic capital from public or philanthropic sources to increase private sector investment. So this is a leverage play. So this is basically what blended finance does. It takes government money, DFI money, public money, and it uses it to de-risk or underwrite deals which because of that bring in private capital that's looking for a market rate return. And so this layering allows us to do many things with impact finance that we cannot do in the commercial world, and they create structures. So we've got here, concessional capital, which means it's not looking for a market rate return. It may even be 100% loss capital. So we're going into a structure which then allows private capital to come in at market rate. So you can see the numbers here. So here's the growth of blended finance according to Convergence, $161 billion of capital that's been deployed that would not have been deployed otherwise, except for these blended structures. And here's how they do it. There's 4 basic ways you can do this. So there is a structure that has concessional capital, so philanthropic, public, impact investing, PRIs, that sit underneath commercial debt and equity. So it de-risks the overall capital stack by taking first loss position. There's a lot of equity. The second thing is risk assurance. So that's where you provide a guarantee. So it's not actual capital in the deal. It's saying if something goes wrong in the deal, we will take the first loss. So let's imagine there's a default rate of 10%. We'll take that, and that means for the commercial money, there's much less risk. So that's the one on the right. The second one on the right at the top there. The third thing is you can use this capital as a technical advisory pool of money technical assistance money, which will allow deals to become investment ready. So it's basically grant capital that goes to an investee and then allows them to be more attractive to the mainstream. And the fourth one is on the bottom right, is where you provide capital, often grant capital, to prepare for transactions. So to underwrite some of the complexity and the transaction costs of blended deals. So these 4 models allow us to use that spectrum in different ways to leverage those billions of dollars into impact, which simply would not be there otherwise. So these are very distinctive features of the impact investing market that are unique to it and which are used in many clever and complex ways to bring in more investment into climate and welfare and areas where the market will not go unless these assurances are provided by other players in the market. And for those players, this model is attractive because it leverages their capital. If you're a grant maker and you can take $1 million in grants and give it away, or $1 million and bring in $10 million of market rate capital, you are doing a 10x increase on your potential impact. So everybody kind of wins in this space. Okay, and that's my time. Thank you. I think I'll be hanging around after the panel in case there are questions there. I don't think I'm allowed to take questions now.
I think we are keeping on with our panel. So good afternoon to everybody, and a warm welcome to everybody. It's a privilege to have Professor Nichols from the University of Oxford with us today as our keynote speaker. Thank you very much, Alex. His research and teaching ranges across several areas, and impact investment, impact measurement, and impact bonds are just some of them. So it was great indeed to listen to him explaining us the landscape of impact investing and preparing us for the panel ahead. The objective of this panel is to give a glimpse of what impact investing is as a model that can be integrated into different kinds of investments and projects. Since Turkey has a nascent market yet in impact investing, with a remarkable potential though, We believe that sharing good practices from different sectors and countries will be insightful for the audience today. So our panel is comprised of distinguished experts who have delivered successful examples of projects which have impact investing as a component integrated within. We have 3 examples of good practices to be presented today. 2 of them are hospital projects done on a PPP basis. And we will have the chance to compare them perhaps if time allows us. Whereas the 3rd case is a social impact bond realized to tackle youth unemployment in Antwerp. So I would like to start with Filippo Adari, the managing partner of Plus Value Advisory Limited. Filippo is going to tell us the case of public-private partnership initiative for the new public hospital of Treviso. So over to you, Filippo. So I'm turning to Günay Gökçen, who is going to present us the case of Elazığ Integrated Health Campus as a PPP, in where Turkey's first green and social project bond is also inserted within. Günay, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Şafak Hanım. I would like to first of all take this opportunity to thank you to Turkish Capital Markets Association giving this opportunity to present our project, the Turkey's first green social project. I will be sharing my screen now. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Do you want to maximize?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Does it look good?
We're fine. I think we're fine.
Okay, perfect. Elazığ PPP Hospital represents an important milestone in sustainable infrastructure development and provides an example of recent innovation in the finance market. To give a background of the project is the part of the Turkey's flagship health transformation program, and it consists of design, build, finance, and maintenance of an integrated campus. It's located in Elazığ, and it's serving it was built in a region with limited access to high quality health services. The project by Meridian, MIGA, and with the support and collaboration of the Meridian, MIGA, and EBRD, has been financed with the first liquidity-backed political risk insurance for a greenfield project bond, making 288 million euro long-term project bond issues to support over the 1,000 new hospital beds. Given the Turkey's long-term infrastructure financing needs, traditional financing sources were unlikely to match Turkey needs. To unlock the bond investor capital, Meridian, MIGA, and EBRD collaborated with the important and created innovative features to finance this project. EBRD provided key liquidity support in both construction and operation. MIGA provided comprehensive political risk insurance, and as well as EBRD committed up to 89 million via 2 contingent liquidity instruments, which was crucial for the project. Ultimately, project with the 288 million bond issue, BAA2 rated, 20-year maturity, and green and social bonds in place now. To mention that the project especially was constructed with the strong local partners with Renaissance, have significant experience and expertise, and strong social rationale for the project in the region with limited access to high-quality healthcare service. Focus on the ESG and sustainability throughout the development basis for the bond certification as green and social bond. delivering the first project bond financing in the Turkish PPP market by focusing on mitigation key risk, careful structuring of the credit, crucial multilateral support, Elazığ reached financial close within 1.5 years. Meridiam and EBRD structured the revenue support facility as a liquidity bridge to fund the debt service between termination and PIR payout. Moody's assigned credit rating of Baa2 to notches above the Turkish sovereign rating at that time. Onshore issuance structure allowed us to complete the project in time, where established jurisdiction of offshore issuance in Luxembourg, particularly in the view of limitation of local securities regulatory framework. I would like to mention that. On the other hand, revenue support facility by the contingent liquidity from the EBRD and sized to cover debt service until MEGA insurance payment has allowed us to complete the project financing. On the other hand, political risk issues, it is mainly what Alex mentioned as well. Robust political risk issues covering senior bonds from political risk events, including breach of contract, currency restriction, and PIR guarantee by MEGA in place for 20 years, matching longer senior bonds tenor, helped us to produce the green social bond project in Turkey. As Turkey's first green and social project bond, it was our project. It's being certified by Vigeo, and which is the ESG rating and auditing agency, and it's regularly reviewing our project is to see if the project maintains Meridiam ESG requirements, IFC's performance standards, the EBRD performance requirements, and World Bank Group Environment, Health and Safety ESG guidelines. Key aspect of the project, Green Bond, reporting obligation on human rights, human resource, environment, business behavior, and compliance. Besides the ESG, I would like to mention that our project, Elazığ project, it's a good stand for ESG and as well as the SDG. SDG 3 promotes well-being at all ages. The facility serves over 600,000 people. SDG 11 promotes access to safe, affordable, accessible infrastructure. Due to the nature of the project, accessibility for vulnerable group is a crucial focus for us. SDG 16, sustainably reduce corruption and bribery by encouraging implementation of mechanism regarding the transparency and dealing with non-compliant suppliers. SDG 7 promotes effective usage of clean energy. The project has strong system and mechanism to improve energy efficiency. Thus, as a side note, on the 24th of January 2020, there was an earthquake in Elazığ, and we immediately after the earthquake, Meridiam and its partner reallocated the project funds and bed capacity relief relief efforts. And we also, for the commitment to the community, we have been engaging with AÇEV to support the kids on the post-trauma physiologic support and village and temporary residences in Elazığ region. Of course, issuing a bond and the project through the green social bond would require the resilience on the bond rating as well. Standard project finance and PPP structural features and contractor robustness, which includes the debt service reserve account, maintenance reserve account, distribution lockup, full amortization debt, lender step-in rights. Project has recently by Moody's credit opinion dated on the October 13, 2021, credit quality of the ALZ Finance remaining unaffected by the downgrade of country's sovereign remains 6 notches above SBAA2, proudly. And we believe ALZ Finance credit quality continues to reflect the issuer's multilateral credit engagement and strong project financial metrics compared to the peer projects Moody's assessed. I would like to thank you all to listening to us and having this opportunity to present our project.
Thank you very much, Günay, for your presentation. This was indeed a good example of blended finance, and it's wonderful to see that it has been listed as a good practice from Turkey. Now I'm turning back to Filippo Adari. Filippo, are you ready to present?
Ready. Let's try again. Can you hear me correctly?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. You know, stubbornness is everything in life. Okay, but I can see I cannot. Ah, yes, finally, I got it. Okay, here we are, guys. So, interesting enough, I will also present a project about how to embed impact investing in a project financing for an infrastructure project, in particular in the hospital of Treviso. And I call him mainstream impact investing, because our challenge was exactly to test. This was a real experiment to see the potential of impact investing in mainstream projects, very large projects. And, you know, our jobs is exactly the one of working with large market players and helping them to embed the values of innovation and sustainability in their business model. So with this project, we wanted to test impact investing at scale by design. Alex knows better than me that we have plenty of what I call small, little, cute impact investing projects that never scale and never really make a difference on the large scale. So we decided to try this scale first. And clearly, infrastructure projects offer the right opportunity. We design impact investing journey. So the first one was to identify the occasion, and the occasion was exactly this project financing in Treviso. But the second one was to map the available opportunities. So what I will present will be the end of a research of the various financial models, something around what Alex presented. And then it was to design a solution, a customized solution for especially the private sector players, the ones, you know, putting the money on the table, and to proving the value of impact investing. Proving from the private sector point of view, let's be clear about this, in the range that Alex presented to it, is a financial return, especially for the non-converted. Just keeping this in mind is not really a question of what we believe, it's what works in the market with mainstream players. And clearly the proof has to have a positive impact in the bottom line on the infrastructure project and be coherent with that one, and then to create a replicable model, because ultimately business is about potential for replicability. It's not an artistic performance or similar. So few information about the project financing for the renewal of Treviso Hospital. It is a project financing to design, finance, build and manage the hospital, which is a provincial hub for 1,000 beds, so not small. serving 1 million people community with a 21 years concession. The project is about restructuring and extension of buildings, a quite large area, technical upgrade facilities and equipment, management of non-medical services. So quite substantial, with a public tender launch in 2011, but then the consortium was won by Lend-Lease in 2014, and we reached the closing in 2017. Very long journey, and total value 200 million euros. So the interesting part it was that we really retrofitted impact investing within an existing project. So we knew all the legal framework, but also we knew the lending conditions. So we designed the impact investing essentially to improve the lending conditions by the banks, knowing the cost of money. And we operated on a size of 40 million, which was 50% of the credit part of this 250 million. And with that commitment from the private company leading this project to use 100% of the savings made of those lending conditions to create an impact investing vehicle. That was a fundamental part to trigger the success. This is what happened. Perhaps later we'll talk about all the other failure approaches, but essentially we convinced the European Investment Bank that at the time could use the guarantee of the Juncker plan. Remember, I think Alex was model number 2, if I'm not wrong, essentially to provide capital at the lowest rate on the market. Remember, we knew the price of all the other commercial banks, and so it was very easy then to make the difference. Essentially, we made 90 basis points savings on the initial price. On that 29 million, that generated 1.8 million savings, entirely committed to create an impact investing vehicle. For the ones who are interested in the architecture, we had to design, in working in partnership with the banks, a new legal arrangement that is actually in the contract in order to separate on one side the special purpose vehicle, which is the company running the project financing, from the impact investing vehicle doing the impact investing operations, that on the right. And with a clear flow, it's the red arrow in the center of those profits, because ultimately they are profits which are segregated in a separated vehicle, and also all the process certified by a third party. So what we did was then we were able to help the private company to make savings on the cost of capital, but against their commitment to use the entire capital for impact investing. That created the 1.8 million. It is essentially turned into a corporate venture capital operation with impact. I'm just realizing that the slide I'm sharing are probably an old version, so there isn't the investment that we recently made. We are actually closing the first investment, which is an investment in a startup specialized in a university spin-off of the University of Bologna, specialized in new therapeutical use of stem cell. So this is also peculiar as a impact investing operation, because rather than looking at the, let's call it social services, but as what is usually we do, we look at something which is really cutting edge innovation that has an impact on the health service, to the medical services, on the research for the hospital, and finally for the teaching, because the hospital hosts a university unit. So its impact also conceptualized in a quite different way compared to what we do. We can explain more better this in the Q&A. The important thing was to align the impact investing strategy with the project financing initiative. So a perfect alignment that was clear to all public and private partners, creating a new legal and organizational model that has been adopted by the European Investment Bank in the post-Juncker plan, which is the InvestEU. We are talking about almost 400 billion public-private investment program. So this little experiment was an enabler for a much bigger and important results along the line. Remember that all this was, from a financial point of view, not really viable, because the investment we made to put together all these kinds of innovations certainly eroded that 1.8 million. So the value of this is not on this within this single operation, but in the new models, and also validation that we have proved on impact investing. Naturally, all the processes has been monitored and certified and documented for the third party. It's even included in the project financing contract with the banks. So it's very formal in this way. That was the investment that I skipped in the first one about this company. If you want to know more, there is a bit of literature for the bookish people listening to us. And I'm closing here. Thank you very much, everybody. Let me stop the sharing.
Shafak, you're muted.
Okay, sorry about this. I think the technical team has muted me. Well, many thanks, Filippo, for this detailed presentation and sharing your insights for this specific project. And now I would like to introduce Ian Diva, who is a researcher at Hogan University of Applied Sciences. Ian is going to present the case of social impact bond to tackle youth unemployment in Antwerp. As we all follow, unemployment among young people has become a chronic issue in many countries, and it has grown immensely during the COVID-19 period. So we are happy to have Ian today to tell us about the innovative way of getting young people into jobs. Over to you, Ian.
Thank you, Shafak, for this introduction and the opportunity to present the SIP mechanism at the Turkish Capital Markets Summit.
Ian, are you ready to share, or do you
Yes.
want us to arrange it? Okay, perfect.
You see my screen now?
Yes, we do. Perfect.
Okay, very good. So I'm Ian Diva. I work for the Research Center for Sustainable Organizations of the University of Applied Science in Ghent, and we do research and support organizations on our environmental, social, and economic topics. And my focus is social impact bonds. So what is a social impact bond? It's a new funding mechanism that creates impact to bring about real change. It's a unique public-private partnership between government, investors, and service providers that leads to governmental savings. And the private investor pre-finances an innovative, high-risk alternative program not suitable for traditional tender financing and focuses on outcome and not output. So the government pays back the investor if and when the project delivers results that generate public value plus a return on investment based on the social savings of this initiative. So in regular functioning, how does it work? The government wants to solve a social problem and outsources the service to a service provider, a social entrepreneur who starts working with the target group. So for example, if the government wants to reintegrate 100 unemployed people into the labor market, the service provider starts up a training course to reintegrate these persons. If I go back to the first slide, because I want to specify out that at the end of the program, for the 100 unemployed people, maybe 50 or 60 get a real job, but the service provider will send an invoice to the government for 100 trainings. So can we rentabilize this operation? And here is where the social impact bonds come in. The idea stays the same. The government outsources the service, but here in this project of a social impact bond, it's a private investor who will pre-finance the whole project to let the service provider take care of the target group, and an independent evaluator will analyze the negotiated success ratios, and only if those success ratios are achieved, the government will refund the investor's capital plus a return on investment. A return on investment generated out of the governmental savings of the intervention. So where do we get this return on investment budget? In the example of the 100 unemployed people, if they start in a job, that means that the government will no longer have to pay the unemployment fee. So this is a public savings for the government, and a part of it will be used to refund the return on investment for the investor. So practical implementation of social impact bond, how does it work? The first thing the government has to do is to define the social problem. Which social problem do we want to attack and to be solved? So in the example of the first social impact bond in Flanders, Belgium, the issue was to tackle youth employment in Antwerp. The first thing we did was to analyze what the market already covers at this moment. And we found out that about 12 to 13,000 needs and potential needs in Antwerp were there, and increasing daily, regardless the efforts of the social service and the city of Antwerp. So there was an alternative, innovative methodology needed to cover this problem. We gathered the stakeholders and we calculated the general public savings to determine the return on investment, and which this was the structure that we used. The VDAB, the Public Employment Service of Flanders, launched the project. The investor and the service provider teamed up to cover the problem of 270 unknown needs. And the result should be 10, 20, or 30% better than regular operations. And only if they achieve this result, the independent evaluator will evaluate this and will reimburse the investors plus a return of investment. The return on investment on this project varied between 3 to 9% of return on investment. So where are we at world scale at this moment? There are 225 impact bonds on world scale. So it's still very new for about an amount of 542 million capital raised. And the median of projects is from about 410 service users. And the average duration of the project is about 4 years. So social impact bond can be used in different kind of sectors. The one in Belgium was on unemployment. It's also the largest percentage of implementation of social impact bonds on world scale. Social impact bonds can be used to help vulnerable people. There is an example in India where there is a social impact bond to get young girls back into school. There is one in Hiroshima to conquer cancer, so it's on health. The very first one was in the UK, Peterborough, on recidivism, so it's justice. And very recently, there were 2 social impact bonds called the environmental impact bonds. So social impact bonds can also reach out to cover the climate change issues. So why is social impact bond interesting for investors? It's suitable for investors looking for a social risk investment opportunity with a return. You will invest in impact and not merely in organizations. And you can see it as a grants that are repaid with a return. So if you look at the spectrum that Professor Nichols presented, we try to merge the extreme left and extreme right of the spectrum to create impact. It's also reaching out for the Sustainable Development Goals. You can integrate it in your CSR policy, and a lot of investors find their way to environmental and governance investment, but the social investment still remains very complex and not easy to find. So social impact bonds creates opportunities to invest in the social department of the ESGs. On macro level, it goes even further. If you look at the United Nations estimation that there will be between $5 to $7 trillion on yearly scale needed to achieve the SDGs globally, according to the World Bank, but this capital doesn't exist. So how are we going to solve it? If you look at the right little button on your screen, that is the amount of money that is invested in social impact bond today. So the advantage of a social impact bond is that if you invest in a social impact bond and it's successful, at the end, the government will refund the investment, and you can reinvest the same amount of money. So in matter of speaking, the social impact bond generates new capital that can be reinvested time after time. So it's like creating a positive loop of capital flows to cover the needs of the SDGs. So in my opinion, it's really a tool for the future. Let's join forces for the sustainable value creation of the SIP mechanism, which is an opportunity to achieve more impact for the non-obvious problems with combined forces, government, investors, social entrepreneur, that will generate public value, plus a return on the investment based on the social savings of the initiative. So welcome to join, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ian, for your presentation. I cannot see any questions in the chat box, and as we have almost used our time allocated for us, just before closing our panel, I would like to turn back to our speakers to have their final thoughts in a minute to wrap up. And as Günay has a plane to catch, I will give the word to Günay first. Günay, what would you like to say in a minute, please?
Thank you very much, Şafak. Yeah, of course, what I would like to see the replication of more of the kind of Elazığ project in Turkey. I think that's the aim of the government as well. We just would like to see more green social bonds project to be in place in Turkey.
Thank you, Günay. Alex, what would you say?
Well, I think it's really amazing the amount of innovation that's going on with these different structures. And I think that's going to be a big part of how we can use impact investing effectively to address big issues. And I'm very taken by Filippo's ability to scale the model. I think that's also important. Lots of SIBs are pretty small at the moment, or impact bonds are small. I think they're often experiments, and it's useful to see how they can catalyze subsequent big investments. The other thing I would say is that in all of these models, I just think we have to be very careful about what impact means. So in some ways, impact bonds, define that as a financial value, but I think we've always just got to be cautious about exactly what impact we're achieving whilst we're getting all excited about financial modeling. Not to criticize the examples we've seen today, but I think that's always something to be front and foremost. Impact investing, after all, is about impact, not about investing. Otherwise, it's just investing. So I think a cautionary word is all I'd say.
Very true, very true. Thank you, Alex. And Filippo, thoughts?
So in 2016, we tried to finance the operation, not really with banks, but initially with social impact bonds first, then with social bonds, and we failed because financial intermediaries were not ready to participate. So if you look at the changes over the last years, since then, it's quite impressive how much the market has moved. Still, I see great resistance from financial mainstream players at really engaging at the impact level. Keep an eye on one. Recovery funds post-COVID is opening a unique opportunity, which is aligned with the impact agenda. Number two, the digital tools enhance our ability to measure, or at least to be transparent about impact. Because I don't think we can force a certain view on impact, but we can expect transparency about impact. That would be already, in my view, enough, and in a way that is understood by the public. And thirdly, the challenge for the kind of projects we do, trying to move the big beast in the impact space, it's always to get them to make a profit. So my obsession, not because I really care, but I know that it's the only way to get them on board and move the trillions.
Thank you, Phil.
The last thing, by the way,
Sorry.
Following that, the same player, Lend-Lease, is setting up an 100 million impact investing fund. So it's a proof that you can persuade the big beast to move into the impact space.
Thank you, Filippo. Ian, we have a question in the chat box. Hi, can the guidance of capital markets create effective results on different issues such as youth unemployment? Is the question. What would you say, Ian?
I don't really understand the question very well.
Well, perhaps it's a question related to capital markets. So are the social impact bonds, can they be defined within the capital markets framework? Let's put it that way. But as we know, they are not. But what would be your thoughts, Ian?
I think that, and this is what I want to reply as final comments also, that the social impact bond is a tool to create a dynamic between the capital markets and the social service providers world and the government. So if those worlds start working together to create impact, then the sky is the limit. So this is what we want to generate. We don't want to start a project just financed by social impact bonds. The real issue is that we want to create a system where impact investment markets and service providers start working together in collaboration and co-creation to create social value. And I believe that this mechanism can contribute to a more sustainable future emerge from the COVID-19 crisis in this world. An ideal time to strive in collaboration and co-creation with partners to maximize and make sustainable impact. With state budget being stretched in many different COVID-19 measures, public financing needs new capital injections. So this capital market can be an answer to that. This creates new dynamics between government and capital markets. So the spendings of those governments can be rentabilized to create bigger impact. So it's in my opinion, surely a tool for the future.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. Alex, would you like to comment on the question?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ian's completely right. It's a very good way of bringing in, much larger and more conventional money into these projects. And as I said earlier, these are often, I think, sort of like almost like a petri dish. They're experiments, and they see, what the market capital will tolerate in terms of risk and return. I think that way they set, a potential benchmark for subsequent models and structures and also growth. So I think Ian's entirely right there. They're almost like alchemy. They somehow get mainstream investors, service providers, and outcomes payers all to agree the same objectives. And that seems like it's impossible, but it works in these models very often. So they are, I think, quite important.
Thank you, Alex. Filippo, do you have anything to add for this question? You're muted.
Don't expect capital markets to do anything else than what they're very good at. They are the arena of the big beasts, and they are feral and brutal, but they are power. It's for the others, and I believe the public governments, but also for the innovators to design for those players the way to use their power and their brutal force to positive ends that meet their instinct and at the same time generate public good. Yeah. And so events like this one are perfect to share exactly how we do this. And I'm more interested in, to be honest, in those experiments than sometimes the rhetoric about the impact investing. We have done the rhetoric. Now we have to work with the solutions.
Yes.
Everywhere.
And that's why the objective of this panel was to explain that it is doable. So I am receiving warnings. We have come to the end. Many thanks to our speakers and participants who joined us today. And we also thank the Turkish Capital Markets Association to invite us to deliver this panel today. All the best.
And thank you, Shafak.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Ciao.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.